We are in the midst of a national public health crisis.
And this is why 8 people die every single day in this country from opioid overdoses.
New numbers are out suggesting the staggering effect of opioids in Canada. The majority of those fatalities have been linked to fentanyl.
Vancouver, when fentanyl came in, a lot of people were overdosing in this alley.
But where it first showed up in Vancouver, it is an epidemic and an overwhelming crisis.
We have been seeing 4 people a day dying in British Columbia on average. Those are all people who have loved ones, families, and friends who are devastated by these losses. We can't allow it to become the new normal.
What our mandate is we help people that are down. We give priority to Vancouver Police Department, so we transport people that are a danger to themselves, either a ride to detox, the holding cells, or we take them to jail, or we take them home. And then in between those calls, we will be giving rides to people that are down, people in the grips of addiction that are, some of them will be immobilized, some of them will be very sick. We take them to and from the hospitals to the shelters. And then we're basically another set of eyes out there for the police department. So right now we are going to pick up a couple of police radios down at the kiosk.
2 Quebec 40 for log on. Thank you.
The service runs 7 days a week.
Our home base is Dispatch 2, which is the downtown east side, etc. That's where most of the action for police as well as us is involved.
You know, a lot of it has to do with the opiate crisis too. There's a lot of overdoses. You hear sudden deaths all the time. You hear sometimes you know the people. More times than not, we know the people because we've done this for so long. Many friends of mine have expired. Like, I've been sober a long time, so the people that I sobered up with, if they relapse in this day and age, they stand it. It's not a matter of if you're going to die. It's a matter of when you're going to die, and they do. And that's what's waiting for anybody that's doing drugs in this day and age.
Of course, we like to see people be able to correct their problem, and that doesn't always happen fast enough or ever. But the fulfilling part is that we understand those people and we can be a helping hand for those people without character judgment that other people might affix to that sort of behavior.
So people are out there dying in the streets. As I watched the government cutting the funding to all the organizations that help people, they absolutely cut the funding back to the point where you're operating on a skeleton crew, yet the streets are flooded with fentanyl. I don't know, I always find myself going back to what would I want for my children, you know? They give out needles, they give out crack pipes, they'll supervise you shooting up, they'll put you on methadone, Suboxone. How is this combating the fentanyl crisis?
The bottom line is the success rate for conventional detox that we have right now is about 4%. At best, let's be kind, at best it's 6%. So that's a 4 to 6% success rate for people getting off drugs. Any other industry on earth that had a 94% plus failure rate would be out of business almost immediately. It's not working at all. It's not producing results for the vast majority of people. So if you could take that 4 to 6% rate and turn it into 50 to 60% success rate, you have significantly moved the needle on an entire spectrum of problems, which is raining down not on just, Vancouver and Canada, the United States. We're in the midst of the worst opioid epidemic in all of history. And Ibogaine is something that can make a significant dent in that.
It's a worldwide problem from China to Australia. It's not something that was created overnight. Big pharma systems of support and ongoing maintenance for these particular drugs that are getting back to where you were yesterday type of existence have got to be transplanted with better drugs and better systems like Ibogaine, helping people get through detox, and then a support system that makes sense, that emphasizes the positive
We're in the midst of a major epidemic. The number one reason for people dying under 50 years old in the United States is overdose. So, I'm hoping that this can be more mainstream and more approachable to people. And, that's why we really come at it from a medical stance too, is it's so important to make it acceptable on a larger scale. I'm hoping that people can get the healing that they need.
Hearing about Ibogaine and hearing that there was a way for me to try and get out of this lifestyle that was different from anything I'd done before was such a relief. As skeptical as I was about it, and addicts are probably the most skeptical people ever, because they're constantly scheming themselves. I didn't actually even think that it worked after the first day when I was still not feeling well. But the next day after, just the relief of having that distance between myself and my addiction, and the first week home back in Canada, and the first week after that, and just the first incident that happened where it was stressful or upsetting, or anything that I would have done before where I would have just used that to use. I would have just, there was any excuse, that came up that I would have used in the past that I didn't even consider using now. I got through being ill. I went to the hospital, I got my IV fluids, I took care of myself. Well, I had really amazing people around me trying to that helped take care of me. Every day felt a little better. Within the first 2 days of being back, I knew that I wasn't interested in using opiates ever again.
Ibogaine resets your neurochemistry back to a pre-addictive state. So if you're actively dependent, it blocks the withdrawal symptoms, but it also mitigates the cravings and desires to use afterwards for about 1 to 3 months, depending on how quickly you metabolize. But the most amazing part of Ibogaine, in my opinion, is that it eliminates the post-acute withdrawal symptoms, which is commonly referred to as PALS. So that's the cravings, the depression, where nothing makes you feel normal except taking the drug or getting high. Ibogaine fast forwards that period of time, so your brain's functioning as if you've had a few years of sobriety, which gives you a solid chance to make it, and nothing else does that.
Well, Ibogaine is a plant medicine. It's derived from Tabernaty iboga, which grows in Gabon and Cameroon in West Central Africa. And it's been used there for a very long time in spiritual initiation ceremonies, which are sort of like coming of age rituals. You're going to become a man, or you're going to become, a woman. You're no longer a child, and this is a ritual and a ceremony that you participate in. They've been using it there for hundreds of years in lower doses, because in lower doses it acts as a stimulant and it prevents fatigue, so you can stay awake and hunt, or it basically makes you feel alive at very low doses. Microdosing Ibogaine, basically. It's been a very long journey from, the jungles there to, street corners in New York City, and eventually to treatment clinics. The origins of Ibogaine for drug treatment would be, Howard Lotsoff's observations, at least the public knowledge and perceptions regarding it. It is extremely likely that the CIA was aware of what Ibogaine does as far back as the 50s, because Harris Isbell was working with Ibogaine, and they were dosing patients at the Lexington Narcotics Farm, which was basically like a prison for drug addicts, and they were seeing what it does. And it's extremely likely that they noticed what Ibogaine does far back in the 50s. They just didn't publicly share their knowledge with anybody else. And Ciba Pharmaceuticals was investigating Ibogaine as an antihypertensive medication, and they eventually abandoned research, but they also made a few observations about it. So it isn't like nobody else knew, it's just nobody else shared any of that information when it was available. It took Howard and his going public with his experiences to sort of change start this whole explosion that we have today.
I for sure have been sort of following Ibogaine as a substance of interest. The potential of Ibogaine, from the anecdotal reports that have been provided by people who have had experiences with it, suggests that it could be extremely useful in treating addictions in terms of providing the same kinds of insights that people report from drugs like LSD or psilocybin, a kind of life review, a perspective shift that can lead to long-term behavioral changes. And particularly with opioids, often people report ceasing or an ending of their sort of cravings and sense of dependence on a drug that's otherwise very sort of sticky and difficult to come off.
Every possible treatment modality, every paradigm, every detox, every therapy, nothing ever worked.
Dr. Deborah Mash is a professor of neurology and molecular and cellular pharmacology at the University of Miami. She is one of the few scientists in the world to study Ibogaine, a mild hallucinogen that comes from the root of a shrub found in West Africa, and was rumored to have the amazing ability to help drug addicts kick their addiction.
So on the morning that I went for my first Ibogaine treatment, I was on 200 mgs of methadone, and I was doing about 2 grams of heroin on top of that every day, and that was my habit. And you go in after your last dose, and they tried to switch me to short-acting opioids at the time, and I was on morphine, but that didn't hold me. So then I did methadone, then I did morphine. I mean, I was incredibly dope sick on the morning of treatment day. And it just feels like your skeleton is being smashed. Your spine is being smashed in a vice. It feels like pain, basically. You're hot, you're cold, your skull feels like it's compressing in your brain. I mean, it's not good. It's not a great feeling. And within about 30 to 45 minutes of doing Ibogaine, it feels like you're just suspended in this ocean of warm energy, and my habit is gone.
I started working with Ibogaine because I had a really long heroin addiction, like a 15-year addiction. I had been through 15, 20 different treatment centers. I was an epic failure at it all. I was desperate. I was desperate to find something that worked. My family had researched Ibogaine and found Dr. Deborah Mash, who's the world's leading expert on Ibogaine. And my mom had contacted her. It was honestly so synchronistic. Dr. Mash had called my mom back and said, you know, I felt an angel tap on my shoulder and I knew I had to help this family. And Dr. Mash sent me to this clinic, Clear Sky Recovery. And Dr. Alberto Sola owns and operates Clear Sky Recovery. And he was my treating doctor, and he saved my life. And, you know, I hands down got my life back from this.
It puts people into a 4 to 6 hours state of almost an active dream. It's like a lucid dream.
As drug addicts in the studies we're about to discover, during that dream state, something extraordinary happens.
It's literally like a miracle. It was like nothing has ever worked, and this just did.
Patrick Kropa was one of 280 people in Deborah Mash's trial of Ibogaine.
Patrick was one of the worst opiate addicts, worst heroin addict that I have ever encountered in my life.
On one level, Dr. Mash understands some of what happens. Ibogaine in the body is metabolized into another compound called noribogaine, and noribogaine appears to reset chemical switches in the brain of an addict.
That is as close to anything that I've ever experienced that I would call a miracle. I mean, there is nothing in modern medicine that can do this. There's nothing I've ever tried that accomplished this, and it just did it in 30 minutes. And that was incredible, because it wasn't like you're clean, which means really nothing. It just means you're not on drugs, but you're experiencing post-acute withdrawal syndrome. You're basically fiending. You just want to go get high so that all this will go away and you feel normal. But not only did I feel normal, I felt good. And that was my first Ibogaine experience.
It started off more MDMA than cocaine, because it's more that rave sort of thing was kicking in from sort of 18 to like mid-20s. So I was doing that, and then as I kind of got out of that, the blackout started becoming more, because I stopped doing MDMA and got back into drinking. I started doing more cocaine, and then the cocaine became probably latter 20s, early 30s, just daily. Hiding it from everybody, the lying, the manipulating, thinking you're fooling everybody, but everyone just feels so sorry for you. They just don't want to say anything, or they say something and you just snap and you get angry and you blow everything up, and nobody really wants to say anything because they know it's just going to end up in a disaster. Everyone that's getting outside of themselves is escaping for a reason. And if you can actually face that reason head on, whether it's, you might not even know what it is, and something like Ibogaine will unlock the subconscious mind to let you know where your disconnect is, what your problem is, or will help rebuild those neurotransmitter pathways quicker on a reset. That's what I've been learning about Ibogaine, is it helps reset the damage caused by your drug abuse to help set you on that right path again.
You always have a buddy that you use with, right? He had been to rehabs and stuff. He's like, rehab doesn't work, man. He's like, we gotta go do this Ibogaine. I'm like, let's do it, man. Let's go. And then, so we got booked in to do the one down in Cancun there. And I jumped out of bed the next morning, man. I ran downstairs, started doing calisthenic exercises, started doing push-ups, sit-ups. I was like, I'm awake now. Because it's like it puts you in this fog, and you don't know that you're in the fog until you come out of the fog.
When a client flies in, we pick them up from the airport, we bring them back to our facility. If somebody's opiate dependent, we give them morphine up until the treatment so they will not be sick or in withdrawal during their stay. The second day, we give a full EKG, a liver panel test, a blood workup. We need to make sure that you're healthy enough to receive the Ibogaine. We also give a therapy session to prepare the person and help them really set an intention and go into this with an open heart. Then on the third day, we administer the Ibogaine. Within 45 minutes of taking the flood dose, it resets their neurochemistry back to a pre-addictive state. The clients wear an EKG the entire time. They'll have an IV in their arm for hydration, and we monitor their pulse. The treatment lasts 24 hours. The next day is day 4. They're going to be exhausted, tired, self-reflective. They'll rest, contemplate their experience, and be with their thoughts. And then on day 5, we give a follow-up fraction dose of Ibogaine. This will work to increase the long-term effects, but it'll also mitigate any slight residual withdrawal symptoms that are still lingering. And then later in that afternoon, we give another hour therapy session to help them process their treatment and just really talk about what's arisen for them. Days 6 and 7, they'll rest. We give a therapy session on each of those days as well. But then on day 7, we give the second fraction dose. So at that point, they should be about 95% withdrawal free. And then days 7 and 8, we give shots of B12 to help them gain strength and energy. And we also give daily massage. We teach daily yoga. We teach meditation, breathing exercises to really help them integrate the experience and, deal and cope with anxiety. And then they fly home on day 8. We have a few programs that are longer, but our 8-day program seems to be what most people qualify for. It's based upon the addiction, which determines the length of the stay.
Yeah, going there, I had no expectations. I had no anything. I just had hope that it would work and see what it was all about. So I've heard a lot about it. It's very calming. It's on the beach. You feel very welcome. Food's absolutely spectacular. Staff's very accommodating, all very nice, and the accommodations are very, very plush. It literally helped me forgive myself, helped me forgive others, helped me give an introspective look as to why I am behaving the way I am, why I chose to do the things I chose to do. And it ultimately, I can always try and blame everybody else, but the buck stops with me. It's my life, it's my choice, it's my doing. In my mind was just how much garbage I've put into my brain, like how much damage I've caused, how much people I've hurt, how much I've hurt myself, how many people I've let down, just a constant barrage of crappy behavior. My plan is to do 2 random drug tests per week at the discretion. Also try to hit a couple meetings a week, trying to stay connected into a community of sobriety and change my entire network. Be honest with, I told my brother actually today before I came in here who I was purchasing my stuff from, and the ability was able to, tell another friend who was able to stop that from ever happening again. So I'm trying to now establish a life again. I need to get back to work. I need to be present for my family. I need to have more selfless acts about me than selfish acts. And that's how I'm trying to live my life. I got optimism today. I feel strong today. I feel like, I can make it now.
You don't need all the sand and whatever else. I mean, I walked out in that sand maybe once or twice when I was there. I swam in the pool once or twice. Even if you had a facility that had maybe just something for people to do just as far as getting a little bit of exercise and something, I mean, sure, that's a nice place, but not everybody can afford to fly that far. Number one, it's the distance that it is, right? It's a good ways. I mean, obviously, there's going to always be some people that have the coin to do whatever rehab that they want, right? And then there's people that aren't. And if we could find a way to do it for cheaper for people, you could take these people, I bet you go down to Hastings right now, you could probably pull half those people out of there and save their lives with this right now. Some people are too far gone. Like, you got to be really mentally strong to pull yourself out of this as well. But man, you're giving people a good fighting chance, right? Like, it's when you wake up, you come out of the fog, then people realize who they actually were or still are. That they're still, they're still who they used to be. They're not this person that's caught in the fog anymore, right? And then if people like that can go talk to their family, whoever they have around them, to help start giving them some support, I mean, I'm sure you could probably clean up 60-70% of the addicts of this issue that's plaguing, obviously, North America, all over the world, with this, with Ibogaine.
The medical professionals at the Ibogaine treatment center that I went to were just outstanding. Like, the nurses were great, so professional. The head doctor there, Dr. Sola, he's so caring. He ate Saturday at lunch with us every single day. The nicest man ever. And, I just felt so confident that, I was going to be taken care of very well when he was around. This is something that everyone at that center is very passionate about. It's something that they've seen work. It's something that that they feel, just as strongly as I do, that it needs to be available. It needs to be something that is taken to the mainstream because it works.
A lot of people, they've tried everything, nothing works. So in moments of desperation, they're pretty much scouring the internet, looking for information on how to help themselves, how to help their families. They're desperate, and they're in a moment of desperation, and willing to try something that's not conventional, that's outside the box, because nothing else works. So when a client calls, it's really important that we screen, medications, pre-existing conditions, to really make sure that this is a good fit for them. Also, their willingness. This has to come from within. So if somebody doesn't desire this for themselves, then they're not a candidate for this treatment. But it's really important to us that it's a good match for the person that's coming down.
You do need a medicalized environment. You need MDs present who are actually watching what's happening. You need good safety protocols. You need competence. Every medical procedure has risks, and if you weigh the benefits versus the risks, with drug-dependent individuals, I believe it's absolutely worthwhile. People die. I mean, if I look back at my friends from 20 years ago, it's a lot of dead people, a lot of people in prison. There's very few people who make it to an old age when they're addicted to drugs.
Speed is a big one in heroin, but the heroin and everything's got opiates in it. It seems the younger group is going down more because they're doing less drugs. And I mean, the drugs nowadays are just garbage. It's just total garbage. I've seen a lot of deaths down here, like one after another. Kids too, mostly kids. And I don't see anything being done. I haven't seen nothing being done over this.
I had no job skills, no education, so I ended up surviving on the streets, and I was just a recreational user from the outset. But after a while, it felt like nobody cared, and there was not any resources to help me. So along comes with that, the trace that comes with that is that you end up in jail for a lot of years. And so I wasted probably 3/4 of my life in prison. I get out, do good for a little while, and fall back into my using again. And I would, just a revolving door, in and out, in and out, in and out. The success rate is not very big, not very good, because you don't have no tools.
to integrate in society and work with in the compliant society, right?
Over the last 20 years, there's been a sea change, I think, and really it's been in the last 5 years, and in many ways actually the last 5 months, largely due in the last 5 months to Michael Pollan's new book, How to Change Your Mind, which has been an eye-opener for people who might have been not paying attention or skeptical of the contemporary psychedelic research. 20 years ago, there was very few clinical researchers who were even talking about working with drugs like psilocybin or LSD or ayahuasca, whereas now many of the main university faculties on campuses in the United States, Canada, Europe are either have in place or planning to put in place psychedelic research programs. It seems to be that the preliminary results that have been reported in the clinical studies over the last decade are very exciting for a new generation of psychedelic researchers. I think regulatory agencies such as Health Canada and the US Food and Drug Administration are more open and accepting of the idea that these drugs can be administered safely in clinical settings and any possible adverse events managed effectively through counseling and support. And so there's a real sort of openness to continue to advance the psychedelic research paradigm.
I think the number one thing for Ibogaine is the spirituality connection. And I've been, like I said, I'm a chronic relapser, and I've been through multiple treatments. And the hardest thing for everybody that can't connect is the spirituality aspect of the program. So everyone's always trying to, they feel they can't succeed or they're not doing the program right because they don't feel that power greater than themselves. This gives you the ability to connect with that power greater than themselves, because that power is within yourself to know that you are connected. You are a part of something greater than you, but you have to believe that that's part of the process.
One of the other interesting phenomena about psychedelic research is that it's showing a correlation between a mystical or spiritual type experience and therapeutic outcome. So the people who tend to have the best therapeutic outcomes are also the ones who tend to have a powerful mystical type experience during at least one of those sessions. And then of course it's not just this drug itself and the session itself, it's the context in which it's done, the integration, sort of helping people afterwards find the meaning in it and apply it to their lives subsequently. So there's a lot of potential in all of these types of drugs to be explored with respect to better understanding the nature of illnesses like addiction and the types of healing that these types of substances can afford.
It's honestly one of the most profound experiences of my life. You're able to really draw a clear line and connect past, present, and future, and it really puts your life into perspective and gives you insight on, pretty much what hurt you to make you the person you've become. So when you feel this and see this and realize your potential, you're able to step out of the cycles of active addiction. And it's also considered 20 years of therapy in 24 hours. So the clients report just having like this profound insight into different underlying issues at hand. Some are able to tap into the root cause of their addiction. It gives you so much insight, so much information to really help you reevaluate like why you've gone astray, what's led you to this point, and give you different tools so you can step out of those structures and not let them unconsciously run you anymore.
I think that anyone with any length of time of addiction, if they're ready to get their stuff together, if they're ready to take their life back, or even if they're not, I feel like the experience that I had and just the relief that you get and the distance that you're able to achieve from your active addiction and from the pain of the detox process it's just something else. But I know that you need to be ready to put that change into action.
To me, I walk this strip, this Skid Row, because I work at Native Health also too, so I work with a lot of youth there. And they come to me and then they always talk about this fentanyl stuff. I said, do you know the dealers? I asked them. I said, well, yeah, I do. I said, hey, have you told the cops? I said, yeah, I've told the police already. And then I said, with fentanyl, I said, I guess some people say they depend on that. And that's not right. I tell them that's not right. You can't be depending on something that's going to kill you.
The purpose of any pharmaceutical company is not to cure diseases or help people. The purpose of a pharmaceutical company is pretty much the same as any other corporation, which is to generate revenue for its shareholders. Now, there is a tremendous amount of profit in maintenance drugs because the patient is a customer for life. They're going to be coming back forever. Now, hypothetically speaking, let's say there's one molecule that was invented that would have a 90% success rate in curing a certain form of cancer, but it was a single administration modality, meaning you just took it once, versus another molecule which only had a 70% efficacy rate and had a much harsher side effect profile, but it was a maintenance drug. The drug that Big Pharma would be interested in is, of course, number 2, the one that's a maintenance drug that's less effective and has more side effects, because it's going to make a lot more money. So the problem with Ibogaine is it's a naturally occurring molecule. You cannot patent a naturally occurring molecule. You can only patent specific applications of it. And all those patents for Ibogaine versus opiates, opioids, polysubstance abuse disorders, stimulants, nicotine, alcohol, all of them were already filed many decades ago, and all of them have expired. So I have no real problem with large pharmaceutical companies. It's just the way the system is set up. They need to monetize what they're doing, and they need to at least recover their costs. Now, even if there was the white shining light pharmaceutical company that wanted to better humanity, there's no way they would even recover their costs for bringing Ibogaine through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials to reach some sort of endpoint because they can't patent anything. I mean, there's a huge tangled up bureaucracy in place. And I mean, pretty much every G7 nation, in the United States it would be the Orphan Drug Act. That's just one possible means that Ibogaine could make it into a medical framework, at least within the US. There are emergency and contingency situations where people are granted access to a drug. As of 2018, I would say that we are in an emergency situation and the drug epidemic is completely out of control at this point, and there is nothing which has been presented that offers any kind of a reasonable solution. I think that the time is right now for Ibogaine. It works. There is nothing else that I have ever experienced that can do what Ibogaine does for drug-dependent individuals.
Universal Ibogaine Inc. is a company that we are going to take public because Ibogaine has been operating in the closet or in the dark for a very long time. It has been treated to a lot of people on a background or an underground basis, and it's too good of the only alternative that exists today for it to remain in that category. There is no better alternative than this at the moment. It doesn't mean that with research and reinvesting those profits that there isn't going to be continuing improvement in hallucinogenics, psilocybin, and CBD that can also help deal with it. Anything that improves and value adds a recovery system is worth doing. I think it's the greatest improvement in the addiction cycle that I've seen in 40 years of my financing companies.
I mean, this means everything to me, I got my life back. I want to help others do the same. My family got their lives back. I'm eternally grateful. It means everything and more to me.
I don't have all the answers. I honestly don't. I think that there's many different answers to a very complex problem. The success rate of AA and 12-step programs and stuff are very small. I think that They need to come up with alternate treatments, and a lot of them. Some people find their way through Buddhism, some people find their way through Christianity, some people find their way through Ibogaine, some people find their way through ayahuasca, some people can do a 12-step program. It's a very complex times we live in, and I think that we need to have a lot of treatment available for people who want the help, and they need it right away.
Because of the opioid crisis, that even affects us as well, because we transport people from the safe injection sites. So for non-medical emergencies, we almost constantly have calls from Inside or other safe injection sites to transport people to St. Paul's or VGH. Some people have regular visits because of those circumstances. So opioid crisis affects us as well.
I think that North America desperately needs some sort of pilot program, some sort of special exception to at least open up Ibogaine to some people. Because obviously what we have right now is not working. As of 2018, the leading cause of death, leading cause of accidental death for people under the age of 50 is ODing on drugs. It has consistently gone up for years of time. And having been involved with Ibogaine treatment it's been a long time. It's been about 20 years for me now. And I've worked with hundreds of patients before Ibogaine, during, after, and people throw around all these different success rates. Like, Ibogaine is, 80% effective. Ibogaine is 90% effective. It's, it's 95% effective in providing a painless detox from whatever you're addicted to. Higher than 95% if you get some boosters. It'll just work. It will absolutely, unequivocally reset you.